Iain Kaya, words taught to me by the Perth Festival's Noongar Advisory Circle. Iain Kaya. The Noongar Advisory Circle, a group of 6 Noongar elders, Roma Winmar, Viv Hansen, Richard Wally, Carol Innes, Barry Maguire, Mitchell Hutchins. Constituted by Artistic Associate Kylie Bracknell, supported by then Head of Programming and now Artistic Director Anna Rees. A structural change in that organisation, embraced by the entire organisation. I acknowledge that circle and all elders past, present and into the future. In Noongar, Brudia Kora Kora Ye Ye Brudawan. Brudia elders. Kora Kora the past. Ye Ye now. Brudawan tomorrow. That language taught to me and used with permission. So in that spirit, some observations and provocations on past, present and future. Hopefully, like Wes, launching pads for conversations between our local, national and international attendees. The past, Kora Kora. Artists are creators of and participators in ceremony, music, dance, theatre, the creators of vibration, the movement of bodies, the telling of stories. We, as people in the arts, are part of a long and extraordinary history of invention from around this globe. We all explore this from our own histories. But the earth on which we're currently standing sings a Noongar song. Every rock, river and ridge sings its history. Always has, always will do. This country and the custodians of this country are going nowhere. That is immutable and unchanging. Acknowledging that fact as a non-Indigenous Australian doesn't silence me. And that fact can't be silenced. Those songs of this place are not mine to sing, but they exist implacably and eternally. There are barbarians at the gates who, especially post-voice referendum, are feeling emboldened by the opportunity to challenge that notion. We, every one of us, are duty-bound to listen to this earth and listen to the custodians. Custodians, plural. Custodians, many. A moment to talk about leadership. There's a myth that individuals break through to great heights because of their skills and their talents and their incredible hard work. History is littered with examples of those individuals. It's the 19th century Western romantic notion, after all. The idolisation of the individual. A resonant note is that most of those idolised were men. But what we haven't seen are the shoulders on which those individuals stood, the hands that were outstretched in support. In that context, we don't recognise the village. We see the child, often the man-child. There are 2 broad descriptions of leadership styles: stick way, similar to what I just described, and circle way. So, from Wes, dear Wes, this idea of circular or collective leadership. The circle way. The circle can help people hold complexity, work through conflict, discover new possibilities for collaboration, and honour diversity. In addition, the complexity of who has the right to tell what story is mitigated by a plurality of voices in a room. Because in programming a venue or a company or a festival or an event, how can one individual be the sole arbiter in these times? A multitude of voices in decision-making also becomes the embodiment of working for understanding or the common good. But there are 2 issues with this. When does working for the common good just look like continuing the status quo? And if you're looking to break through into a new era because the status quo isn't working, is there still a common good? Secondly, and as a natural follow-on from that, working for a common good has an implication of we, and what bias, conscious or unconscious, is present in the defining of we who hold the centre. For me, the power of the collective and collaborative and collegial decision-making, making sure that the collective is representative of the diversity you are striving towards, both in who is making and who is the audience, helps maintain a centre, but one that is porous and open enough to welcome. It is also useful in balancing a program, platforming sometimes wildly divergent views, which together can create balance. and reduce the risk of polemicism and from that alienation or unwelcomeness. The aim is that each member in that circle is safe to express their view, and collectively you create a centre. So a multitude of voices can help create safety. And also, you see nuance. Brings us to the present. Yay, yay. Nuance. I don't normally write speeches, but I'm just kind of, and then I read, and then you're less funny, and then and it feels serious, but anyway, like you're an important group of people, and so I wrote my words down. Thank you for listening while I just read words out. Then I'm going to have a chat with Wes in a bit where, it might be funnier. Nuance. Inability to see nuance is an issue about which one feels deeply. Nuance is, when extrapolated to a group, the number one most frightening thing about tribalism. Inability to see nuance in an issue which one feels deeply is, when extrapolated to a group, the number one most frightening thing about tribalism. It's one of those lessons the human race seems incapable of learning, even though we are subjected globally and locally to demonstration after demonstration of what happens when groups of people who are motivated by good and reasonable sentiments get so busy fighting the holders of other sentiments that they let go, sometimes without noticing, of the principles that got them into it in the first place. Why do we do this? Because we like to gather in groups of people with whom we agree. It's safe, it's calming, gives us a sense of purpose and connection. Look at us here. This is the essence of what is more broadly known as cancel culture. At its worst, it amounts to online bullying, can result in threats even worse than the original offence being called out. It does not bring about social change, as there can be exclusion of anyone who disagrees with views. But it allows marginalised people to seek accountability, gives a voice to disenfranchised or less powerful people. For me, there is a case to be made that art is the answer because it is filled with complexity and nuance. It is by its very nature filled with intricacies, joy, ineffable sadness, subtlety, subjectivity, interpretive paradox, love and fear, but above all, a sense of shared humanity. Distilled simplicity, unfathomable complexity, little like the humans on this earth and the artists who weave the narratives around us. The narratives of today. So still in the present, create for the now. Commissioning is at the core of every arts organisation's raison d'etre. The primacy of creation and support for local artists is at that core, to create stories of our time and our place. But here's a thought, commissioning that isn't prescriptive, commissioning that is an invitation to a garden. I found myself dwelling on this garden analogy a bit. A fertile place of play, a place of safety, a place where circumstances are created, soil tilled and time held, and the urgency of the world held at bay for artists, for creatives. It is a producer's magic power holding that garden, and they should be rightly celebrated for it. Commissioning is a risky business, and so many commissions don't quite make it. But allowing time for creation is the key, and being as forgiving of the need for time as is possible. The spark of creativity is a mysterious, elusive beast, but having time in the garden is its only generator. There are profound rewards from being the gardener, whether you're seen or unseen as that commissioner, it doesn't matter. Knowing you've done everything within your power to tend that earth and make it a garden for ideas to take seed and dreams to grow. That is the reward. And grow into the future, Burdawan. Something that works against the idea of togetherness or universality or a common good is the atomization of the way we each experience the world, specifically the effect of social media. The effect that social media has on curating a sense of belonging and bond with a particular group, that tribalism I referred to earlier. You see the effect of this most notably in the current failures of the generalist or non-genre Pacific music festival. The Splendour in the Grass, the Grooving the Moo, the Falls, all gone in that idea that you have a vast variety of music genres and you put it together and people will come. Singular artists or single genre music offerings are proving far more successful. You go with your group, with your people. And that is because the digital native generation receive those things, part of that same idea that your experience, your life is being curated by an algorithm. That digital native generation are the future audience. So having them as central to the circular model of artistic decision-making, a curatorium, is therefore all the more urgent. And talking of urgency, where does our ethical needle sit in terms of climate change and touring and internationality? We want artists to enjoy the full benefit of their beautifully, impeccably created show that has emerged from the garden that you tended, to tour and be seen by as many people as possible. And the logical solution to that, when you live in a place like this, is collaboration. Collaboration and non-exclusivity in presentation. If you're going to exist on the other side of the globe, and for us you do, then making use of those air miles is logical in every sense of the word, in every sense of the world. In the end, it's only ego that requires exclusivity, and maybe a government KPI, but governments are made for lobbying and KPIs are made for changing. The positions of Jerome Bell and Katie Mitchell in deciding not to travel is to be lauded, but comes with its own complexities of old power structures. They live in a hugely privileged part of the world in Europe with a high density of art makers and consumers. That privilege affords them the privilege of their position that they take. For so many artists from so many parts of the world who are forging their own new art, this is simply not possible. So we look at programming selectively from elsewhere, but also lean into programming closer to home, with direct conversations about place and belonging and the care for country and togetherness. Old wisdoms that make sense for future planning. I share one story to finish about breakthroughs and fences. As we spend time dreaming over the next few days, know that there is a path from over there at Harrison Island all the way up the ridge to there in Kings Park, from Madagara to Karakumba. That track was walked by Fanny Balbuck, great-grandmother of Richard Wally, member of the Noongar Advisory Circle. Fanny Balbuck was a Noongar activist and powerful leader who lived through much of the early years of the Swan River settlement. She walked that track along the ridge, despite the increasing number of obstructions, of fences and houses. She broke those fences. She walked through people's houses because the song travelled that ridge. Always has and always will do. Thanks.
You need a drink, love? There you go. Take that one. Excellent. Hey, we've got about 15 minutes for some questions and answers, and you'll find that there's a microphone on either side here. So if you do have a question, and can I reiterate a question? It would be great. I know that these forums are fantastic and there's so much wisdom in the room. So if you do want to give context, a short amount of context, but please ask our speaker a question if you can. I'm just acknowledging, while people are making their way to the microphone, that that this conversation is had. I mean, you pointed out straight away, as a white man on a black land, as a man in a world that needs other ways of working, you acknowledge that contradiction, but also, what shape does allyship look like then? I mean, we've just taken up a good, 40 minutes of this conference already as two men on the stage, and that is given to us by lots of women, so thank you very much. But this notion of going, what does allyship look like? The commissioning, you said, using power, absenting yourself from power in many ways. Do you want to talk about that?
I mean, like talking about absenting, having just finished 6.5 years, beautiful years at the festival, and stopping and removing myself completely, like actually because that feels like in terms of the quality of what listening is, and being not there for the moment is the most useful thing.
Yes.
Which is the paradox of then getting us to do this, and like it's that circle. You go, here, there I am banging on for 14 minutes, and you don't really want to hear me. Like there's like that quality of conversation. The number of brains in this room, that everyone is on that same trajectory. So how best can we lead that conversation? And the only answer is listening, and then it's in the distillation. So I always go to this idea when I'm learning a piece of music. It starts off super simple, and you just play some notes, and then it gets very complicated, because then there's a multitude of ways of trying to figure out how to put those notes together, and then something happens and you get to a distilled simplicity. And the many voices are inside that complex bit. You go, this is easy, I know the answer, and then go, I fucking know nothing. And then there's a chance, and but that takes so much time to get to that bit where it's distilled simplicity, where there is agreement and where there is a sense of togetherness. And it's inside that listening, and we should spend so much time inside that complexity.
And I think it does take a level of confidence. And I've got to the point now that to be an artist or in the arts nowadays, you have to have the middle class confidence to engage in the world, because if you're holding up, all of the issues that let's say in my family, you talk about violence in the home or alcoholism or people in prison or whatever, or drug abuse, that sometimes that doesn't award you the space and the time to kind of bring in that kind of thinking as well.
Yeah, and that's all of the privilege, and I spend a lot of time.
You talked earlier about holding the centre, which is interesting, and that not allowing the extremes. Magda Szubanski said just recently at the Sorrento Writers' Festival, she was talking about being militantly moderate, saying not allowing the militant extremes to hold the conversation to ransom. That the militantly moderate, which is hard to say, that's where we often will operate, and that's where real change occurs. And you talked about holding the centre in that way. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, passionate centrism. Like, you can, by all means, hold a polemic, like sit out there and do that, but by its very nature, it excludes so much. But I'm still yet to know whether I'm going to become that person.
Yes.
Like as an artist, and just to kind of sit out there, I want to please too much, I think. So I'll end up kind of like getting to that bit. I think if I really analyse where that is on a personal level. But like the role in terms of an arts organisation is to be that, and it's to acknowledge that is really tough, because in the end there is such a vast variety of those opinions, and you're not answering any of them because you're asking for understanding to hold all of them.
Well, and the exclusion to all others, which is the issue, the bigger thing. Though having said that, I mean, is there an argument for an extreme position being articulated, so as a straw man is the term, isn't it? As a straw person, that you can then kind of go, oh, what do I think about it? Where do I kind of bounce back forward on that?
I mean, I talk about senses of gravity.
Yes.
And so any of these things, one of those opinions, if a powerful idea will move the entire centre of gravity, and I think that's the way that activists do think that happens. If you make that point, then actually the whole thing. And it's that annoyance of what it is and the slowness with which that centre of gravity can shift.
Marvellous. We have someone arriving at the... Yes, you are, great. I thought you may have been coming back from the toilet or something, so sorry, love. Just please introduce yourself and...
Can you hear me?
Microphone? Go for it, love.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I work out in Mora, a few hours northeast of Perth, so I work rurally. My question is, these ideas are really great for when you have lots of people with similar ideas in the city. I work for local government, so I'm the only person with any artistic background in that place. How would you suggest I start these conversations and work through that in a rural setting?
Can I suggest maybe you're not the only person with an artistic background, but how do we identify it is the question too, isn't it? And how do we empower them?
My thought is, straight away, is that it's not actually, that curatorium is not necessarily artists or arts practitioners, but it is literally community, and in what sense that is. And if there is the trouble being that time is the greatest gift for anybody, and you can unlock people's creative contribution or sense of self or social cohesion, all those things, through time spent. Yeah. And you don't have enough time. No one has enough time to do that for enough people, so that you then feel like you're doing that. And so that's, however, I described it in this environment from an arts perspective, but for me that read community, read diversity of views, and however that goes. And so who are your peeps, and how do you continually reach out, not those who get to you, but those who you can find to be that world. But more power to you as well.
Yeah, we do have a quite a large artistic group, particularly of our local Aboriginal people. Yeah. Obviously, being a white woman in a government position is something that I struggle with, trying to lead and be the connection between local government and a group, to get the best for a group of people who, obviously, it's in a tricky being in a tricky position.
And I'm hearing too that there's a sense of isolation you're feeling as a practitioner. Can I just get a show of hands, those people who are working in small regional communities where you feel that sense of isolation, especially in Australia? Small handful of people around. Please find the time over this weekend to have those to have these conversations as well, because I think it's the isolation as well that's a big issue. And thank you for all your hard work. I think that's something that local government is a thankless task.
Until now.
Well done, Natalie. But I think that's almost a state of being for every artist, is the sense of isolation you feel. And how do we kind of combat that? How do you combat it, that sense of isolation? How do you build community around you to challenge your ideas but build your ideas?
I mean, I forgot to do that because, I've been doing the festival job, so I'm just trying to figure that out again. But we've joined I've got an office in a group which is a collective, and inside that there are visual artists, musicians, a writer, an architect, and there's 5 of us in a shared office space. And they're people who I just love bumping into, and then you have a conversation about something tangentially unrelated, but it just kind of kicks you and it gets you through. I mean, I'm an expert at procrastination, so it's kind of like anything. So I can have those conversations all day long and do absolutely no work. And so, I mean, there is like the real work, the actual grind of writing music. Like there is no, so I've got to be careful.
There's a question.
Just on my tippy toes here.
No,
it's all right.
Oh, sorry, I use the word love a lot, but please take that as the sense of love.
Okay. Yes, so this is just... It's fine. Just back on this idea of centrism, of being in the centre, how do you avoid being in that position and it not just being a position of avoidance of really critical issues where you do need to take a more, a kind of more direct approach?
If you think of what the strongly held arguments are, then holding the centre doesn't mean being beige. Holding the centre means if there is that argument and you think that argument has currency, then you make sure that there is an argument that is making sure that a contrary or an alternate point of view or perspective is also being offered. And the more of them there are, then the more that becomes a circle of possibility, and therefore the centre is the logical argument of the result of that multitude of arguments, rather than saying your argument isn't welcome because it's too extreme. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm advocating that you hold that argument and you hold that position and you hold a multitude of them, and it's hard because sometimes the perception can be that people are not welcome, and that's true, and that's what you suffer, and that's what keeps you up at night in a curatorial role. Yeah, and then in terms of actions, how does the process then move towards actions from, if you're holding it, let's say you've got two quite opposing ideas on something, and you're in this kind of taking in all these views, how does that... I mean, the action is making sure there's an audience if it's a conversation, or the action is commissioning. If you commission one, then you commission an alternate point of view as well. The action is in the creation of the opportunity for that conversation to be heard more broadly, be that in the creation of art or in the quality of a conversation.
I think to add to that, the idea that we often think about the setting of the table and thinking everyone has to sit at the same table, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think that sometimes people do need to sit at their own table and see if people will come to them or not. But it's the balancing of setting enough tables for all those kind of conversations to go. Though we're in the gardening. And sorry, what was your name, love?
Gabriella.
G'day, Gabriella. Thank you for that. And where do you work, love?
I'll
stop saying love.
I work in Fairfield in Western Sydney, PYT Fairfield. Yeah.
And how do you create those spaces of conversation?
I find it's really difficult because we work in a really multicultural community, and when we make art, like politics and things that are happening in the world are so real.
Yes.
And so we're often kind of in these spaces of having to take kind of stands with different positions with our artists because it's so effective, like it's affecting people directly.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just something that I've kind of noticed. Like there's so much happening in the world and it really does affect young people, especially young people who are so globally connected to so many things in the world. So
yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
No worries.
We've just got a couple more minutes. You did talk about I just did the table metaphor, which is silly when we talk about gardening here.
Yeah.
The idea of, creating pathways and growing things. And you mentioned the weeds, tending to weeds and all those kind of things. As the gardener of the Perth Festival for all that period of time, what do you look back on and say, I'm incredibly proud of that? That's something that shifted and changed the conversation in this city, if not the whole nation.
I think it's tough to own or to have favourites. Like, I think from my point of view, the constitution of the Noongar Advisory Circle and the fact that sits with the organisation, so I alluded to that. The setting up, not my doing, but it's a methodology inside the festival, which is called the Audience Project, where you have, there is an artist is coming from internationally in the instances where we ran the Audience Project, and you go to the community from who that artist has a connection, and you go, how can more of your community enjoy this piece of art? They go, they won't buy until 24 hours before, they won't do that, the festival will sell out, a long time ahead. So you hold all those tickets, and there's all those people, no, we can sell more tickets, but no, you hold those tickets, you make them an appropriate price, or if not free, you make sure that the people who need to see the show are given every opportunity to do that. So that idea of the Audience Project, rather than any single, that as an idea feels emblematic of the garden. I think
it sounds like it's centering the artist in that process too, so that it's not just the marketeers taking off.
Well, yes, but also where and how you connect to community, so it becomes a far more grassroots experience, both for the artists, because they don't want to be sitting there on stage and watching and seeing in an audience not them.
Yes.
They want to go, okay, so what is it? And then the audience gets to experience that alongside that, and then it's not just it's not us and them, it's us and us.
I remember doing a show where 8, 7. I remember doing a show where we absolutely said there needs to be 25% Aboriginal audiences, because if there's not, the white people won't know that they're allowed to laugh.
Yeah.
And there's that kind of conversation that needs to occur as well. Love, I love you.
Right back at you.
But there's a deep love for you and your work and your vision and your heart. And I just feel that, you're one of the people in the world who, we don't want to deplatform in the process, but we want to make sure the garden you're creating is open to so many people. So thank you for all your amazing work, and thank you for your provocation today. Iain Grandage, everyone.